Welcome to the penultimate episode of Halloween in July 2024. Months have no meaning anymore. There is only going further and further off the rails until we can no longer recognize where we are. There is only the all-consuming darkness that signals the ultimate consequences of our struggling against reaching the final link in this chain reaction. No direction we can go will take us further from our fate. It's finally... sorry about that. I've been getting in the weeds of all these games lately. My Patreon's yearly discount is still lowered as much as it'll let me lower it, and if you go in on that, you'll get one of these cute little patches here. And if you go in for the year at the $5 recipe tier or higher, you'll get a patron apron just like mine. Well, before I messed mine up with some freeform embroidery. All as a free thank you gift. So, I attempted to play all the Garten of Banban games over the course of 3 days. This was, believe it or not, a calculated decision because while I knew I would have to play these eventually for this little experiment I'm doing, I also knew that the Euphoric brothers, the creators of the Garten of Banban series, have a very fast turnaround between games, so I needed to play these as late into this as possible. And sure enough, a couple months ago, while I was in the middle of my move, Garten of Banban dropped on Steam, with Garten of Banban 8 already announced and in the pipeline. As you know from this experiment, it is me adopting the beginner's mindset while taking a look at a variety of the more popular mascot horror games. Before we get started though, I'll give you a primer on Garten of Banban. Garten of Banban just showed up in early 2023 and it defies all explanation. It just is. It's no secret that these games aren't exactly marvels of gameplay, storytelling, or software engineering, and frankly, I'd say the real marvel is how bad they are in all of those aspects. However, these games have what is frankly a pretty big fan base that blurs the line between irony and sincere enjoyment, at least as far as I can tell. I'm a big fan of bad movies and have hosted quite a few bad movie nights to get people Neil Breen pilled, and I just can't feel out this vibe. Not yet anyway, as I'm writing this before I played these games. In short, I'll describe these games as the game dev equivalent of trying to learn how to play guitar by watching Van Halen music videos. I think that's all I'll say for now, and with that, we are checking all our previous conceptions and expectations at the door and just taking these games as they come to us. No outsider knowledge, no background drama, no outside lore, nothing. Just the games. You'd better buckle up for this. Welcome to Garten of Banban the First. It is short. It took me 35 minutes to go from letting the game initialize and install from Steam to closing it out. And 15 minutes of that was me wandering around the entire map looking for a single hidden button that you need to press to activate the final sequence of the game. As for what you do in the game, well, you walk around for a bit, you push a couple buttons, collect some eggs, and then the big scare scene happens. Well, something happens anyway. You also get the drone. This is going to be a core mechanic of all the Garten of Banban games. It's a drone that moves slowly, only goes in a perfectly straight line for a set distance, and it will bump into everything between its starting point and where you want it to go, which are usually these comically huge buttons that you only use the drone to press, which I'm just looking at these going, I could probably jump up and slap those buttons myself. Why do I need to use the drone? Garten of Banban the First does have a bit of a spooky vibe in it, which is kind of the exception for the series, save for a bit at the most recent game. There's something just unnerving about seeing this extremely vascular Opila bird peering at you before you make it into the play area, and then it just decides to play statue. Opila needs those eggs for protein, but we all know that you only get such vascularity from dat dare cell tech. The chase itself was a bit of a jump in a what the shit, it's moving now, stop that kind of way. But it is a little silly with the way that Opila goes down. Then we get a teaser for what might be the next monster in the series before it ends. That's Jumbo Josh, by the way. This game is really short, I cannot stress that enough. The entirety of what happens is that you come to the Garten of Banban daycare? I think it's a daycare or a front for a daycare to find your lost children, which for some reason, despite being told that time is of the essence at the beginning, we're told to advance time, essentially wasting it. Surely this is not an omen for things to come. Literally 3 months later, we got Garten of Banban 2. The Banbaning. Okay, I've made that subtitle up. Something that I've seen about these games is that based on their Steam release dates, these come out fast. flirting with breaking the beginner's mindset here, but I'm just going to consider the Steam pages part of the game. Garten of Banban started in the beginning of 2023, appearing about 4 months after the last game the Euphoric Brothers made, and as of writing this, there are 6 games in the franchise. As you might have noticed, I previously said the most recent one was Garten of Banban 7, and now I just said there are only 6 games. We'll get to that later, don't worry. Something I learned about, which has persisted for what I think is all of these games, is the lighting effects. I was playing with the settings, trying to figure out why this game is so resource intensive, and inexplicably, across all the games, when you turn the lighting effects down to the lowest setting, not only do they look much better, on top of that, it knocks off about 10 to 15% of my GPU's power usage. That's another interesting thing. Garten of Banban does not look good. It's entirely reasonable to assume that if something looked competently made, it is most likely a third-party asset. I checked, and the majority of the credits in these games are attributions to third-party assets. You can tell that something is not an asset in a Garten of Banban game because it looks like, well, everything else. In spite of this game is thirsty for processing power. If I had to guess, it might have something to do with these custom models, which look like a lot of the fine details that would normally be part of the textures covering the models are just part of the model itself. Yeah, I think that would do it. Garten of Banban 2 expands on the gameplay to add a bunch of oddly specific and time-consuming challenges. Stuff like the punch card puzzle, which makes no sense in any sort of real-world setting. Dying to Nab Nab, because while you followed the correct pathing, you did not step precisely on the arrows and miss the survival zone or whatever they got going on under the hood here. And the mess that is Banbalina's school. The school puzzle in particular is on my extremely naughty list. You can't really figure out these so much as guess them, save for a couple of exceptions, so most of this is trial and error. In fact, arguably all of it is trial and error. Also, what on earth is this run animation? The theme for not just the puzzles, but also the action sequences is that they're fairly easy to mess up if you aren't careful, or in Banbalina's classroom's case, just don't know exactly what you were supposed to do. And then if you get something wrong or the bad guy catches you, you have to start all over. Be it because you flubbed the extremely tedious cannon puzzle, or because you didn't know that you were supposed to pick the really smart kid for a basic addition question instead of the smart kid. In spite of all of these things that seem to be here to pad out the runtime, casually playing the game only took me 80 minutes, and most of that felt unsatisfactory. So let me get you up to speed on things so far in the Banbanverse. We pick up where we left off in the elevator with Jumbo Josh just kind of taking a nap. I'm sure he'll be back up in no time. This is where we meet Banban himself. He wants to help us to help him, so he helps us avoid Nab Nab, who is just there on the big mural now. Banban bamboozles us after imparting us with the knowledge that drones were used for comfort, and we're forced to fend for ourselves. This involves drone puzzles and finding out that Opila Bird is alive and wants our cell tech, which gets us trapped in Banbalina's classroom. We escape, there's a big ol' snail, we do another collection puzzle like in the last game, and finally we get chased by Banbalina, who gets fucking pancaked by Jumbo Josh. I told you he'd be alright. And with that, welcome to Garten of Banban 3! There will be even more characters. You will even help make a character. Garten of Banban has these little murals in each— oh, it's snack time! Oh, here comes the boy. Any second now. Boy's getting slow. Look at this dude. His snack dispenses and he's just like casually walking up to it. Boy can't be bothered with anything. Oh yeah, we were, talking about something. The murals, right. Like, new characters just appear on the murals as if they were there the whole time. I think this has something to do with going into deeper parts of the SCP Foundation kindergarten, but for now it's just like Nob Nob in the last game, Nobnalina just exists now. Also, Stinger Flynn is here, but he was on the original murals in the first place. We'll also fall into a pattern of doing a quote-unquote mission for a character, where we'll see them in the next game. Here being Sheriff Toadster. All of these missions are basically find X amount of thing, where there will be at least one thing that is hidden in some underhanded way that takes a while to sort out how exactly you're supposed to find it. We did this in the last couple of games, so believe me, they're going to keep happening and they're going to get worse. We're 3 games in now. Really, more like 2 plus what's essentially a prologue, so we'll say cumulatively about 2 hours deep, but we are already recycling puzzles. You meet Stinger Flynn over here, who has Steven Universe levels of inconsistent scale, and he zaps you with a visual halo, another staple of the Banban games, which start as being kind of weird, but eventually become so unhinged they're the best thing about these games, based on just how fucking insane they get. But we're getting sidetracked. After you have a little seaside chat with Stinger Flynn, and who I'm going to just assume is like the equivalent of God in the Banban universe, you get a flashback where you play as him and do that cannon puzzle from the last game. Except that it's even worse now, because Stinger Flynn's electro bolts don't reach far enough to hit one set of buttons on the far side, so you gotta jump for it every time, hoping that you can not only hit it while you're mid-air, but also run back to the upper level fast enough to not miss the next button prompt. Puzzles in this one are bad, like bad. I know people familiar with the games will bring up the surgery thing, but there's also this literal Facebook comment bait thing for like people that don't understand the internet very well we gotta do later on. And then the memory puzzle, which would be bad enough with certain things like it being unclear how you put certain blocks back, leading to at least one cheap death while you figure it out. But also, you need to make these jumps while actively trying to hit buttons, and it's really wonky with the prompts, and oh my god, just let me press these goddamn buttons. Ugh. There's just a general lack of quality here, with things such as button prompts being wonky, a lot of jumping in a first-person game, which is generally a bad idea unless you've built your game around that, with lots of mechanics allowing you to control yourself midair and whatnot, which this game certainly does not have. And then there's also stuff like how some of the voiceover work in this game has some pretty obvious plosives in it. That's a bit of a pet peeve of mine, and a sign of amateurish work, as a plosive is one of the easiest things to avoid when recording. You just move away from your microphone a little. Banban 3 has some pretty blatant padding. Not even the stuff that's designed to take a long time, but just there to add a couple minutes of run back to each attempt you make at a sequence. The best example isn't the classroom, dollhouse, jumbo Josh, whatever this thing is, but instead after the boss fight. Never mind that fight itself, but after the fight, you gotta grab some party hats like Banban and go put them on this guy here who's called Kebab Man, I think. Then you have to slowly move it across a long hallway, which is done by pressing a button, watching it move a few feet, and then doing it again until it's where you need it to be. Finally, you use this guy to summon the maybe not Opila bird, and surprise surprise, it's a wonky jumping button prompt where you are likely to die a couple times. Okay, that's to be expected, but then they put you right back in the area where you need to be to jump on the bird, but you don't have the party hats anymore, and you have to run all the way back to the boss area and then put them back on Kebab Man and slowly push that thing back to where it needs to be all over again. Oh yeah, also this game can straight up like hard lock before the final sequence. The bird riding thing, like its head can be in the wrong spot to where you can't hit the button, and for some reason you can't go into the menu during this sequence, so you have to Alt F4 or kill task to restart it. Once you're past that, there's probably going to be at least one other cheap death during this like final sequence, and in spite of all of this, the game is only slightly over 90 minutes long. Welcome to Garten of Banban 4. We are not stopping the ride because crying is not an emergency. It's at this point that I should bring up that the first Banban game released in early January of 2023, and this one released in early August of 2023. The previous 3 games had a whole 2 months of development between them. However, Garten of Banban 4 got some extra development time, with a whole 3 months between the release of the previous game and its debut. These games come out fast. To be fair, and also to add a point of reference, again just throwing all the rules out the window here, the original FNAF games had about 3 months between them, with Scott Cawthon being known to grind out games fast compared to typical indies. Cawthon was also a seasoned indie dev who made a lot of games before FNAF. The Euphoric brothers also made a few games before Banban, but they're not nearly on that level, and again, they are operating much faster than Cawthon. If I had to guess, I don't think the Euphoric brothers are so much learning as they go, as they are just pumping these games out as fast as they can while the hype is still alive. There is some new stuff in the game, such as audio logs, sorta. This Banban game is mostly running back and forth between big empty areas to get parts for an elevator that is broken because reasons. The 3 areas you go in are not interconnected in any way, so each time you have to go all the way back to the starting area to drop off the part you found, talk to Queen Bouncillaria, or however you say that here, and then take the long ride across the abyss to get to the next area to get the next part. Things are starting to make less sense. The characters being added are a little more and more out there, even for a Banban. You know what? No, never mind. We've got blob people everywhere, so the giant kangaroo and a toad man isn't that far out of left field. The weird kingdom thing is another thing, though. I think it's just that these are the assets they were able to find and implement, so they just worked them into the game somehow. The result is a big, awkward area with a few out-of-place assets for this quote-unquote kingdom. I don't know if the Euphoric brothers have, or perhaps had, day jobs before these games took off, but the games aren't so much as improving between iterations as they are just getting stretched out with whatever they can find. Just look at how they found out the hard way that making Banban without a neck was going to make problems for them in the future. The games are certainly growing, but they aren't improving. I think the main concern is padding out the games versus actually adding new gameplay elements or improving existing ones. Long hallways, slow segments, and puzzles like this room memory thing, which is easier to brute force than it is to actually solve, and the most BS collection puzzle of all the games so far. Actually, there are 2 go collect X number of things puzzles in this one. And the funny thing is, in spite of all of this, the game is still well under 2 hours playing casually, with my own playtime weighing in at 1 hour and 33 minutes. I'm not refunding these, by the way. I'm a better person than that. If anything, despite yet another boss battle, which I guess is a little better than the last game's boss battle since you actually get to... Wait, no, you used a drone in the last boss battle too. These games kind of blur together after a certain point. This game also would have taken me even less time if it was not for the fact that I got not 1, but 2 soft locks during my playthrough. One where Banban just forgot how to walk for a segment and I got trapped by an invisible wall, and another right at the end, which some patch notes allege to have fixed, but I still got it. This has been a pretty cursed time, so I think it's time for a pretty cursed cooking segment. So in the beginning of this year, KFC did it again and made something cursed. The chicken pizza. I don't know how exactly I'm supposed to pronounce this name, but any way I can think of it, it kind of sounds like a new slur that Twitter invented, so I'm not going to say it. When I first saw this thing, the first thing that popped into my mind was, yeah, I'm gonna have to do this eventually. And here we are. Hell is real, and we are in it right now. So I ate the thing, and yeah, if you didn't get a chance to try it, you did not miss much. Much like how they tried to bring back the Double Down, rather than do any sort of special preparation, they just used a whole fried chicken breast, which is a not very good substitute for flat things like bread or pizza crust, because chicken breasts are not flat unless you process them. We are fixing this. First order of business is to take your chicken breast and butterfly it so that it makes a kind of heart shape. Then we're gonna lightly salt these and leave them in the fridge for at least half an hour to up to an hour, and that's gonna start the flattening process because it's a lot easier to flatten something out when it does not have a bunch of water in it. Once that's done, take it out, cover it in plastic wrap. Now take a rolling pin or a food mallet and just take out your frustrations on this chicken. We're just gonna keep on pounding this thing until it is nice and flat. Next step is to bread and fry these. We're gonna season our dredge flour, then do a good old-fashioned dredge, wash, and bread to get these ready. We're probably going to need larger surface areas to coat these big boys. Dredge them with one hand, then wash them in buttermilk with the other, which if you're curious why I use buttermilk instead of egg wash, it is slightly cheaper and a different flavor, more conducive to fried chicken. And finally, once everything's washed, bread with your first dry hand, and do not try and double bread these. We want these to be as thin as possible because these are acting as pizza crust. We're gonna let this breading set for another half hour in the fridge, since if we tried to fry this right away, it would just fall off the chicken. Now would be a good time to prep our toppings. Since this is far from the ideal surface to be putting things on top of, we need especially flat toppings. Pepperoni is a shoo-in and the only thing the KFC version had on it, but I'm also gonna opt in for some mushrooms and green peppers. Slice them up real fine and then grate your mozzarella to have it at the ready. We want to use a brick of mozzarella and grate it ourselves because, as always, whole cheese is better than the pre-processed stuff. Plus it's cheaper too. Once you have all your mise en place, get yourself a high-walled pot for frying. This is supposed to be deep fried like normal fried chicken, so that's what we're gonna do. Once we're done with that half-hour resting period, we're gonna start the heat on the oil and get it up to at least 350 degrees. Make sure you have a thermometer, make sure you watch it like a hawk, and do not let hot oil leave your line of sight. Also, start preheating your oven to 352 because we're gonna finish it in the oven. Once the oil is good and hot, carefully lower one of these flat boys one at a time into the pot, making sure not to break the surface tension of the oil as we lower them in. We do not need to fry these for very long. For one, it's because these are much thinner than they usually be, and for another, because they're going to cook some more later when we put them in the oven to melt the cheese and finish the toppings. Maybe go for 2 minutes on each side or not a second longer than it needs to be to get a nice golden color. Regardless if they temp out or not, once you see that golden color, pull them out, add the next one, repeat. Now we're gonna let these drip for a couple minutes on a rack before topping up because we don't want the grease messing with things, and then we're gonna get everything ready. Use a large spoon to scoop out and spread a thin layer of marinara sauce over the tops of your chicken crust, and then optionally layer some provolone over the marinara sauce for extra gooiness in your cheese. Then take these pepperonis and place them down before you add the cheese. Next comes the mozzarella, which don't get too crazy here as toppings will be prone to sliding off thanks to the non-uniform shape of this crust. And now finally the other toppings. Now these don't have to be in the oven for super long as the chicken is already partially cooked. Maybe 10 to 15 minutes because we're really just looking to barely get that chicken finished and get that cheese melted to incorporate the toppings. Pull them out and there we have it. Use your tool of choice to cut these into strips and we've got chicken pizza. I did plain pepperoni plus the other toppings we sliced earlier, and triple pineapple because fuck the world. If you want the recipe of this with full measurements for some reason, it's up on the Patreon at the $5 recipe tier or higher, where we're still running those Halloween and July specials I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Each one of these pledges goes to returning us to normal games after this experiment. Take a deep breath because we're returning to Banban for now though. There is no Garten of Banban 5. Well, at least not a game. There is a Garten of Banban 5 Steam page that you have to specifically search for to even access it, but it just looks like a bunch of Garten of Banban 1 screenshots with filters over them. The Euphoric brothers have skipped 5, at least for now, and have moved on to 6, and then 7 with 8 coming soon. I don't know why. In the meantime, let me catch you up on the story for the last couple of games since I kinda glossed over it. So back in Garten of Banban 3, we met Stinger Flynn, and basically the whole game is him just trying to entice us with his psychic visions to stop going deeper into the garden. We say no, and he tries to stop us from advancing, which includes trapping us in Jumbo Josh's dollhouse with Bambalina and Nab Nab, who's just not feeling it today. That doesn't work, so after we fight this thing, he makes Banban go sicko mode, and we're forced to flee deeper into the garden, which at this point is already comically huge with massive voids everywhere. Is this thing in the Marianas Trench? Later on in Garten of Banban 4, we're detained by Sheriff Toadster, who takes us to see Queen Bounceria. I still don't know how to exactly say that, who rules over all the assets in this sublevel of the garden. She's special because inside of her pouch are the naughty ones, who are the evil Givanium creatures who need to be locked away forever. I will not explain what Givanium is because I'm not sure myself. I guess all the stuff that Banban and Stinger Flynn have done to us so far makes them more chaotic neutral in comparison, but not overtly evil like the naughty ones. We go on some fetch quests to repair that elevator while being told to keep a lookout for Bitter Giggle, the former court gesture, who now wants to make the queen laugh and free the naughty ones. This is exactly what happens, and I miss the old games. I miss immersive sims and playing weird little indie horror games that were just trying to be themselves and not attempting to appeal to a large demographic that just results with them getting a ton of bootleg plushies made and being sold at those mall kiosks I see everywhere. I want games that take forever to make because they want to do weird shit with their mechanics, not stuff that's slammed out as fast as possible. I want to get back to the California Compliance Challenge. I want to get back to Kenshi, to RimWorld, to that Pathologic 2 video I promised. All the other weird prestige games, all the things I am missing out on, which always, because of how insane they are, will either kill their studios or take so long to make between installments that we sometimes have to wait a decade. I want to stack some boxes. I want to min-max and get weird with my build. I want to get to the end of this nightmare. And we know the fastest way to get out is to go through it. Welcome to Garten of Banban 6. There is still no Garten of Banban 5. This is the only one that took me longer than 2 hours, with my playtime coming in at just a hair under 2 hours and 11 minutes for me to get to closing out the game entirely. Not a single minute of that playtime feels earned. The padding in this one is egregious. Every negative thing I have previously talked about in this series has been cranked up to 11. And congratulations, you got me past the 2 hour mark. I hope you're happy. I wasn't going to refund these in the first place, as I feel that games should be only as long as they need to be, and that the Steam refund system is a sloppy, exploitable solution to a complex problem. If there is a place that you need to go in this game, it will be at the other end of a long passageway that will have a reason for you to go slow through it. If there is a puzzle in an area, you will need to have to figure out at least one key rule through trial and error, and then you will need to do this puzzle several times repetitively to complete the task. And if there's a possibility for you to die in a segment, you bet you are going to die a lot to unforgiving gameplay. I hate this bird. I hate that in this series, no one ever seems to truly die no matter how badly they're injured, because that means the bird can come back again. It better not. My only hope about never seeing this bird again is that there is precedent in this series for characters just being straight up forgotten about. Something of note is that the game is a bit more cinematic now. There's several set pieces where you're observing characters interacting and giving story exposition outside of the usual Stinger Flynn hallucination. I may as well catch us up on the story so far. So after Bittergiggle tells a banger of a joke to Queen Bounceria, the naughty ones get out of her pouch, and we have to flee with Sheriff Toadster to the lower levels where he used to hide out before the Queen found him. Nearly everyone will find their way down here over the course of the game. In the meantime, we need to find the Queen's scepter, which will allow her to recapture the naughty ones. Of course, this means in order to access this, we are required to go to 3 places far away from each other and do puzzles to get a thing, or in this case, unlock one of the locks keeping the door shut. We meet up with Banban in one of the unlocking points where we're confronted by Sir Dada-Doo. You know what, yeah, that checks out. Who kicks the crap out of Banban only to be saved by Bittergiggle. Bittergiggle feels bad about what he did earlier, so now he's gonna help you get to one of the unlocking points to enter the scepter room. Toadster doesn't like that you're working with him though, but he doesn't have much time to complain about that as he goes after Bombalina when she gets snagged by the naughty ones. We meet up with Banban later and have to deal with the fucking bird. Then, with all the locks open, we go to get the scepter, only to find out that it's incomplete. And then some pretty wild stuff happens, and we flee to the lower level again. Welcome to Garten of Banban 7. Something amazing has happened. There were not 2, not 3, but nearly 5 months between the release of this game and the last one, making it the longest a Banban game has been worked on so far, and it shows. That being said, the store page and trailers for Garten of Banban 8 are up already with a projected release date of this year, so there will still be another Banban game sometime before December 31st, meaning there's a maximum of about 7 months that the next game can be worked on if all projections ring true. It's something, I guess. There's also signs of improvement in Garten of Banban 7. For one, there's a good deal of wandering around as usual, but we're actually in a place now and not just wandering through an empty void. There's this city-like area that most of the game takes place in, and there's even these weird alien people to talk to. This is the work of Syringin, who has erected a society in the far lower levels of the garden, which makes Toadster's hiding in that one level even more nonsensical now, as there would have been a place for him to go both above and below below him. He doesn't even seem too upset about actually living in Syringian City, although present circumstances are another matter. Banban 7's puzzles aren't terrible, although I'm not a fan of how unforgiving this big chase is, but at least this alien guy just gets me on the level right now. I feel that way too. Also, hello baby from Resident Evil 8. The story feels even, I guess more coherent now? With the surgeon being a sort of taskmaster for the player character, who's still referred to as a parent even though we haven't really been doing a whole lot of child searching through these last few games, as much as we are just getting roped into the Givanium people's affairs. The surgeon is inspired by recent events, but not enough to tell us what the hell Superflex is. We're gonna have to help him find Jumbo Josh, who is the key to everything, and we can use him to defeat Dadadu and his naughtified minions, which now is basically most of the old cast. Along the way, there's some decent, for a Banban game anyway, exploration and puzzling, and even some self-referential humor. And one other thing, they have somehow made the drone puzzles worse. You can now remotely pilot the drone, and you will need to do that to hit buttons, because you couldn't hit it by telling it to go in a straight line. Why is this bad, you ask? Wouldn't that be a massive improvement to what I previously described for the drones? Remember what series we're in. The drone piloting handles awfully. You will bump into everything. It has tank controls, and it does not stop itself automatically, leading to you having to fiddle with your positioning constantly just to try and slow down enough to see something. And then, all the remote piloting areas have invisible borders, which if you even cross them slightly, you will get launched back to the starting point through walls. I feel like this is a cool idea, it's just horribly executed. Any other game, I would love this, but not here. The game wraps up with the biggest cinematic in the Banban verse yet, where I'm not sure if they were able to figure out how to transition from play to a cutscene for this, since it wasn't a hard cut like the Stinger Flynn hallucinations are. This game's visual halloo is insane, by the way. So instead of transitioning to a cutscene, you have to get into some conveniently rotating boxes and watch all the notified characters get Zumbo sauced. Also, Banban has a secret cousin from Huntington Beach, and that's the teaser for Garten of Banban 8. The ride will never end. I have now played all the Garten of Banban games that are currently released, which is a little over 9 hours between 6 games. While the first game is free, all the other games still cost money, and there are a total of 5 paid games that will cost $39.95. That's $40 basically, which is roughly the same price as Resident Evil Village on Steam right now. And I say that not even referencing a Steam sale, that's just the normal MSRP. I don't think I need to tell you which one I would prefer between the two, and I trust you all to make your own decisions. Will I get Garten of Banban 8? Probably not. I mentioned that I'm into bad movies and hosting bad movie nights, and I remember something I said about Abramor a few years back, which is an absolute gem of a bad game if you're into so bad it's good kind of stuff. When I was playing Abramor by myself, it was a miserable experience akin to watching a really bad movie by yourself. However, when I streamed it on my Discord, it was the best time ever. Banban's got a 1-to-1 comparison here, because watching those Mandalore gaming streams were the funniest things ever. However, trying to actually play these games on my own was a very bad time. If I had to give any sort of recommendation here, it'd be that if you actually want to try these games, do it with a group of friends. The horrific button prompts, hokey acting, and all that stuff will go from groan-inducing to hilarious. And that does mean, however, that someone will have to purchase and have the Garten of Banban series on their Steam library. Maybe you and your friends can take turns, one person buys 2, another 3, and so on. This really doesn't matter though, none of this matters for the Euphoric Brothers. Regardless of if you sincerely play it, or if you hate play it, as I know some others do, or ironically play it with your buddies like it was the video game equivalent of The Room, they still beat the odds. Of all the weird stuff that gets put out onto Steam and itch by small-time devs in hopes that it takes off and becomes the streaming flavor of the month, they got chosen. And if anything, they've been chosen and riding the wave of being chosen for a year and a half now. It doesn't matter if they stop at 8 or keep making these games forever. Even with all the people who try and refund these games, there's a solid chance that they've made, if not life-changing money from these, then pay for a semester or 2 of college money off of them. Out of curiosity, I checked the Steam charts and things seem to have peaked for the Garten of Banban franchise at Garten of Banban 3, with the game's peak player counts tapering off but holding in 4 and 6, before taking a dive down to almost half of what the first game peaked at. This is the best data I've got since I'm not exactly an analyst or have any back-end access here, but even if this ride is short-lived, which if anything, not so short-lived, it's probably one of the longest-lived meme series out there, and even if it's coming to an end, the Euphoric Brothers have peaked higher than many, many indie devs will ever climb. And with that, I have navigated the Garten of Banban. Tune in next week for the finale of Halloween in July Forever, where there's one last franchise to cover, and what better time to do it than on the 10th anniversary of its debut. Don't forget to check out patreon.com/charlatanwonder to take advantage of that special, and let's sign off. Remember that no matter what you do, be it creating weird, janky video games, visual art, be it traditional or modern, dance, or anything else creative, what you do should never be called content. It is art. Content is a word that has been twisted into meaning a way to grind up all your skills, passions, and aspirations into a gray sludge that is meant for nothing more than making a line go up to someone else's benefit. Art is sacred. Your art is a reflection of you by the very nature of its creation, and you do not deserve to be reduced to a gray sludge. So get out there and fight against the contentification of everything by fighting for your art. Stay saucy, everyone.
Saucy boy. It's time. Got a new scratcher. Come on, let's go put in your new scratcher. Oh yeah, he got some mileage out of that last one. Where is my... I am one-handing things that should not be one-handed. And it comes with the stuff. Just a second. I haven't even put the catnip on it. Oh, you are just so excited for a fresh new scratcher. Just give me a sec here. Do I need to? Yeah, I do. Cool, I did not dismember myself. Just let me spread the catnip that comes with the scratcher. Oh, now you're going down. All right, I'm gonna take the old one. And I'll just leave you to it, buddy.